impi chirianista ya kusaranga ya kumana baisa mukutube paikara chirianista ya kusaranga ya kwana baisa mukutusembaika.
We have exactly 10 days to go before we cast our votes on the 13th of August 2026. Welcome to episode 8 of the election tips and insights with me, Kabanse. In today's episode, we discuss the actual voting process and procedures. But before we delve into that, let's first remind ourselves who is eligible to vote. Who is eligible to vote? So, a person who is eligible to vote on the 13th of August 2026 must first of all be a Zambian citizen, okay? Must be a Zambian citizen. Ngati sindi mwe Zambia, if you are not a Zambian, if you don't have a green national registration card, if you are not a Zambian, please, siya tu, tisireni, isinkaniano, stay away from the business. Don't show up at the polling station if you are not a Zambian, because only a Zambian citizen is eligible to vote. Okay? Secondly, for you to be eligible to vote, you have to be in possession of a green national registration card, because that's the only proof that you are a citizen of the Republic of Zambia. So you need to have a green national registration card, and you must be in possession of a voter's card. Asa ibala kuti ngatulibe voters card, it means you are not eligible to vote. Asa enda osauka osachelera pa 13 isinkani yanu until the next time when you're going to have yourself a voter's card, then you're gonna be eligible to vote. Also, for you to be eligible to vote or to be allowed to vote, you need to have your particulars appearing in the register of voters. Ufunika zina yako ilimo mu register of voters. So, voters can only vote in a polling station if they are registered to vote in that particular polling station. However, voters can only be allowed to vote where they are not registered to vote unless they have a certificate of authority to vote elsewhere away from their polling station where they're registered to vote. And according to our electoral process general regulations, when you look, I think it should be section 40 or so, it clearly stipulates what this certificate of authority to vote is all about. Okay, so if you are not going to vote where you registered, there is a form that is issued only by the returning officer to a person who is not able to vote in a polling station in which they are entitled to vote. And this only happens in circumstances where you have been employed by the commission to conduct the elections at another polling station. Okay, if you have been employed by the Electoral Commission of Zambia to conduct elections at another polling station, then you can be given the certificate to vote in a polling station other than where you registered. Other than that, you only need to have your NRC, your voter's card, and your name should appear in the voter register for you to be eligible to vote on the 13th of August. So, what is the voting process? Okay, or how does the voting happen once you walk into that polling station? Okay, first of all, before I even get into the actual process, remember what we discussed in our last episode. We said that a polling station opens at exactly 06 hours and will close at 18 hours, meaning by law, 12 hours are provided by law for you to cast your vote. 12 hours are provided by law. That means that any lost time at the opening of the polling station is added at the end. For example, mukabwera basegula polling station chifukwa maybe there were other delays, there were other issues that affected the process and they did not start at 6 hours. For example, bayamba pa 07 hours. Or let's say bayamba pa 07:20 hours. It means that they are going to close the polling station at 19:20 hours. Because by law, a polling station is supposed to be open for exactly 12 hours. Okay, so the time of opening is always recorded by the presiding officer, and you, if you're an agent, a polling agent, a monitor, make sure you take note. What time did we open the polling station? Was it as exactly 6 hours? By 1 hour, just make sure that an hour is added. If you delayed by 2 hours, just make sure that 2 hours are added. However, there should be a really justifiable reason why the polling station is not opened at 6 hours, because the stipulated time is 06 to 18 hours, which gives you exactly 12 hours of voting. So, how is the voting process? Okay, how does the procedure look like once you walk into that polling station? I would say there are key 5 stages. Okay, there are key 5 stages that happen once you walk into that polling station to cast your vote. Okay, the first step is verification of your voter's identity. Verification of the identity of the voter. Okay, so what is going to happen is that you will go to the polling assistant, produce your voter's card, produce your NRC, and they are going to check that your name appearing on the voter's card and the NRC corresponds with the name in the voter's register. And all the details are corresponding, because no one can fake anything. So the first stage is verification. Are you the person who registered to vote? Are you the owner of that NRC and voter's card? Are you appearing in the voter's card? That's the first stage, okay? The second stage is making sure that that thumb is marked. Marking of that thumb with indelible ink. That's the next stage. Why do they mark? Is to make sure that you don't vote more than once. To make sure that you don't vote more than once. So they are going to mark your thumbnail with indelible ink. Okay? And once they mark that thumbnail with indelible ink, they are going to issue with a stamped presidential ballot. Underline that. The ballot paper has to be stamped at the back to show that that is an authentic ballot paper. Now, what is a ballot paper? A ballot paper is simply a paper on which a voter marks his or her preference for a candidate or political party that is contesting in an election. That is where you are going to mark to show that you have voted. Okay, so ballot papers that we use in Zambian elections contain very unique security features that make them secure. So there's no way Wamatero wangapange ma ballot paper and whatnot. No. So you are going to be issued the presidential ballot paper. The third stage is that you're going to be issued then the stamped mayoral and council chairperson ballot papers, and as well as the ballot paper for the National Assembly or the MP and the ballot paper for the councillor. Okay, so the next stage is also issuance of the other papers, ballot papers for the other candidates taking part in an election. Okay, and then the fourth stage is marking of the ballot paper. Okay, you go to the polling booth. There are booths that are set up where you're going to go. There's going to be a pen there, and you're going to mark X on all your preferred candidates for the president, for the MP, for the mayor, or the council chairperson, and the councillor. All you have to mark is X against your preferred candidate. If you are going to vote for UPND, you mark X against President Hakainde Hichilema and mark X against any of the other candidates that are contesting under the UPND. That way, you have marked your ballot paper. And then, the next stage is for you to cast the ballot. Casting the ballot simply means you get your marked ballot paper and you place it in the ballot box. Insert the marked ballot paper into the ballot box. So remember the leads we talked about, they're different colors and they're clearly labeled to say presidential ballot or ballot for the president. And then we have the ballot for the member of parliament or MP or National Assembly. We have the ballot for the mayor or council chairperson. And then we have the ballot that has been set aside for the councillors as well. So you place the respective ballot papers in the respective ballot boxes. By doing so, it means you have cast your vote. Okay? It means you have cast your vote. And you'll be directed and shown the way out. It means imwe mwavota iyo day kuvota kwanu kwa chitabwanji kwa pita. It means you have cast your vote. So that is the voting process. That is how the process is done. So you enter, you verify your details, you have your thumbprint marked to make sure that you don't vote twice. You are given the ballot papers, you mark them with X, and then you cast the ballot into the respective ballot boxes. Nishi imwe mwachitabwanji mwavota. So finally, to wrap up today's episode, I just want to share one aspect of the elections that we all need to know and understand. And that is the aspect of postponement of the poll or postponement of the voting. So the presiding officer is authorized to postpone the poll until later in the day or to another day where the orderly conduct of the poll has been interrupted. So in an event that the conduct of the vote or of the poll is interrupted, for example, by a riot or open violence or a flood or a fire or any circumstances that renders the voting impossible, the presiding officer can actually postpone the poll to a later date. So in an event that the poll has been postponed, the presiding officer should inform the returning officer, who without delay is required to inform the district electoral officer that elections have been postponed at a particular polling station. Okay? The district electoral officer will in turn inform the commission or the electoral commission of the postponement and the reason for the postponement. Okay? So when the situation ultimately or finally normalizes, the time lost during the postponement must then be compensated. So if an election is pushed for a day due to circumstances beyond control, then it means one day will be allocated to the election. So it's not that no bafuno rigging, bafuno chitacha, no. Where circumstances have been proved beyond reasonable doubt that an election should be postponed, then such an election is going to be postponed until such a time that the situation normalizes. Therefore, it is important that on election day, all of us as citizens conduct ourselves in an orderly manner and follow instructions that are given to us during the voting process to avoid any disruptions of the electoral process. Okay? So it's the onus is upon you and me to make sure that we conduct ourselves in an orderly manner, in a manner that is peaceful, to guarantee the safety and normal running of the electoral process.
Nishina batekanya kwatitebo basakala nyongo ngabayiringanya kwatitebo bapompwe ngabayisa mukulombe voti bayichefya ngapushi walokwa ngabati banakirire batekanye kwatite bali abachimeko